Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of what we are now calling Downright Annoyed with Comic Man Andy, because he's going to be a staple on this show. He's the third host. He's not just a guest. He is the man of this show. So welcome. don't get that puzzled look on your face. But no, I'm Jackson with Bored and Annoyed, and here again with my two friends here. And tonight we're talking about Spawn. But first, let's have them introduce themselves, starting with Mike.
Oh, hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Mike with the Downright Nerdy podcast. I'm one of the hosts. We do a weekly pop culture podcast and talk everything about movies, nerd news, comic books, just things that are going on in our lives. It's been a ton of fun. I've been doing it for almost about next week will be our 60th episode. So make sure you guys subscribe and do all that fun stuff. All the links are down below.
Perfect. And Andy.
Hey, what's up? Comic Man Andy. Host of Andy Given Thursdays on the Comic Core and co-host on Monday nights Modern Men with the Comic Core. And I'm now a newly appointed co-host of this here. So
yeah, sorry. I guess I should have asked you if you wanted to be appointed a co-host of this show.
Knighted. There you go. Knighted. Yes.
Yeah. So, So we I selected Spawn. Now, Solo Wookie, who's a big fan of our show, was going to join us this evening, and it sounds like he might be having some trouble getting in here. But Solo Wookie, if you're listening or whatever, if you make it in, we're just going to throw you right in here. I think he's a Spawn fan. I was looking at his Instagram actually, and he had a picture in front of a framed Spawn image. So I'm assuming big Spawn fan. But obviously I picked this week. You guys know I like Spawn. I think I mentioned it on a previous episode. So initial thoughts, either one of you, on the first 6 issues, or 8 in some cases.
Yeah,
Mike,
for the first 8.
But yeah, I guess initial thoughts on Spawn, just reading it. How long has it been since maybe you read it in the past? Have you ever read it? All that sort of stuff. Either one of you.
Cool. All right. So I'll go. It had been years since I had last read these. Actually, the most recent Spawn anything that I've actually I guess absorbed was the movie that came out. What was it, back in the late 90s, early 2000s? Before that, I hadn't read any of these in quite a while. And actually, as I was reading this, I was kind of surprised at how close to the comics that the movie kind of got, at least in the first act of the movie. It was kind of neat seeing that, and also that was just kind of based on my memory. I hadn't seen the movie in years, but overall it was very dense. There's a lot going on in each freaking issue, but it was a good read. It was fun. I'm glad I kept going through 8, and I might continue it.
Sweet. And Andy?
I may have read this in 93, like a year after it came out, but it's been so long, I couldn't even remember any of it. So I'm glad we picked it up. I'm glad I read it. And for the love of God, I had no remembrance of Todd McFarlane being so wordy.
Right?
Yeah.
This is his art is pretty damn fantastic. A lot of people have loved it over the years. And Spawn, it's his baby, still ongoing, longest ongoing independent comic book out there, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And
over 300 issues, I think.
Yeah. And I don't remember having to read so damn much.
Like usually when we read like a 6-issue, I guess, volume, I think the average is maybe about an hour. This is way longer than an hour for me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's wordy, for sure. But Andy, continue. Sorry, I feel like we might have cut you off there.
No, I was pretty much ending it right there because we've got some time to fill, and I don't want to give away all my thoughts right away.
Sweet. Yeah, I haven't read this in a long time. I'm gonna be honest here. I didn't enjoy it as much as I remembered enjoying it. I feel like the art props it up big time. And I hate to say this, but Todd McFarlane, it kind of does make sense that he's wordy, because even in interviews and stuff, it's like he kind of has And I love him because he created this character, and I think that the character himself is amazing. The backstory is amazing. Some of the stuff and where it goes, if I remember correctly, after this is great. But he does have a little bit of that likes the smell of his own farts vibe to him, a little bit, if that makes sense. So it does not surprise me that there is a lot. I mean, there are multiple pages where it's just the news crew people for the different local channels. And it looks like Solo is hopping in now. But yeah, there's multiple spots with those news crew people where it's like long, paragraphs of text. But Solo Wookie, welcome.
Thank you. Well, bit of technical difficulty as usual. I'm trying to remodel my office and get everything set and rebuilt and done up, and it was like I can't miss the spawn, but at the same time I'm still trying to get everything wired and in the walls, and it's a nightmare.
Nice. Well, hey, it's awesome having you here. You're the biggest supporter, I'd say, of our Downright Annoyed series thus far. Mike, would you agree with that? He's in every single so it's awesome having you here. And I think you might have mentioned it. And is that a Spawn image behind you on the wall there?
It is, and it's a very special Spawn image. Like that's so I got real lucky. Today I'm alive. 10 years ago I got sober, quit drinking, quit doing drugs, quit all that stuff. Turned my life around, did a whole bunch of stuff. So I try on key years to buy myself something special, something nice, something great. And this year I ended up stumbling upon that gem, and it was not cheap, but it was well worth it. And I paid way less than I could have or should have for it. And that is number 1 of 50, signed by Todd McFarlane and from Capullo. And you can kind of see like how the chains come off of the picture, all the way through it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's badass, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those when you see it, you're like, oh man, that's gotta be mine. And it just is. You can see how the cape comes out. It's so that was my 6 month, that one right there.
Sweet.
And, a friend of mine did that one years ago, but yeah, that Spawn, I saw it and it was like, all right, I gotta, that's gotta happen. That's gotta happen. So I made it happen, and I thought, what a great time to show that piece off.
Well, hey, I got to tell you, I'm liking you even better now because I have been sober for almost 8 years. Superman's my favorite superhero, which you're wearing the Superman shirt. And then you have
I knew you'd like the shirt.
Yes. So I am a fan of Solo Wookie, and he has a sweet name, Solo Wookie. So,
right.
but yeah, welcome. And I guess jumping into you, we kind of gave our initial thoughts on Spawn. What makes you love Spawn, especially, kind of keeping focus on the first, the origins of Spawn, I guess.
So for me, I love Spawn because I can relate to him a lot, which sounds odd. Not that I have shoelaces in my face, but I totally get the stuck between good and evil. It's the Clark W. Griswold. You're trying to do the right thing, but it always blows up in your face. It's a Paul's problems. It's just he's doing what he can, but it just doesn't work, Killing the bad guys, making him not work out, and that's what really speaks to me the most about Spawn.
Sweet. Yeah. Awesome. I guess getting into the nitty gritty of these first issues, I would like to just point out, we talked a little bit about Todd McFarlane's art. I find it fascinating that in the 90s, every superhero had to have pouches all over their legs. I always think of Cable. I feel like he was a big one back in the day who had pouches everywhere. It's like, what are you keeping those, Spawn? I don't know when he needs those, but the art is awesome. The look of Spawn with his mask off has always been my favorite. But yeah, beyond that, I think that the first 6 issues are solid. I would imagine, like, I don't even remember where like Chapel gets involved, where we learn about him, all that stuff down the road. But yeah, there's as far as the story is concerned, it kind of starts with your basic origin story. He wakes up and he's back, and he's basically traded his soul. I believe he's traded. He's offered to be the leader of Malbolgia's army or something. I don't even know if we've learned that yet, but I believe that's where it goes. Or maybe that was just in the movie. But he wants to see his wife again. He was killed, and as is always when you make a deal with the devil, it's never quite as cut and dry as it seems, and it's actually 5 years later. And we kind of go into him learning about where she's at now. It's very sad. It's a very sad story. So I guess, Mike, you said you enjoyed the read. It took you a while, but is there anything particular you really liked about Spawn?
Well, I mean, just the horror of what the main character has kind of gone through and is, I guess, going through, like, just kind of putting myself in his shoes. Like, how would I feel if it's 5 years later, I'm dead, my wife remarried and had a kid, where the doctor said that we would never be able to have kids, but I found out now it was because of me. And it's like, dude, it's just his whole, like, yeah, he got to see his wife again, but man, just like that, you make a deal with the devil, you're going to, it ain't going to be, you need to read all the fine print that always seems to, show up out of nowhere. It was just a complete mind F, right? The entire, just trying to comprehend what our main character Spawn is going through. Right. The more I saw, more I read about the Violator, the more I really loved the movie. God, who played him in the movie?
John Leguizamo.
John Leguizamo. I thought he did a great job. I thought he was not, like, after rereading this, I thought that he did a good job at being being that character. But real quick, Solo Wookie, I wanted to show this to you because you showed me that painting. I actually have a couple statues of Spawn, and this one is it's one of my favorites here.
Sweet.
It's kind of neat.
Yeah, he's made a boatload of money off of toys.
Yeah, I'm probably responsible for half of that.
But yeah, Andy, I guess to you next. I know you kind of came down to the wire as far as finishing it. Were you mentioned it's dense? Anything specific that you want to talk about?
Well, it took me what? It would have taken me a couple of days if I read it from start to finish, and I had a pretty busy week, and so I remembered to pick it up tonight and finish the last issue. Very descriptive, very wordy, and I don't know what it is. Something about the 80s and the early 2000s love to do their news story panels. They're all laid out the same. They all look very similar, very robotic. And I just feel like it's a detractor from back then. Like, it's kind of just like, I got to read this again. But what they're doing is, I vaguely remember back then in the 90s, they were portraying how not great the news sources were back then, and how robotic they were, and how plastered they were everywhere. Watchmen, Watchmen, it had a lot of that in there. So did a couple other reads from
the Dark Knight Returns too,
yep,
right?
Dark Knight Returns. Yeah, and then when they show Spawn without his coverings, without his garb on, he looks like chopped up ground beef. One question I really had is in the first issue, because I may have read this when I was a kid, 1993 after it came out, but I haven't read it since. And this was a question I would never had answered, and I was wondering, I'm not going to be able to get to it fast enough. So what's with the clock timer that starts at the top of that panel? It's just 999, 4 nines at the top. And then when he wakes up in the alley, later on that issue, there's 5 missing, or there's 4 missing. There's a 9 at the end turns into a 5, so there's 4 missing.
And Solo, you're probably the biggest Spawn fan. You want to take that one, or? Uh-oh, can you hear me?
Uh-oh.
I think he went robot.
I think you went robot. I think what
So to my understanding, and I apologize, my internet right now, the kids are on the freaking video games and they're driving.
No, you're good.
So to my understanding, your question was that timer counter, right?
Yeah.
So the way it was explained to me is it's two things. One, it's counting down to the time of his almost even level plane, right? The other way it was explained to me was almost like a captain's log or like a star date of him becoming Spawn and then his periods of time as he is Spawn and as he moves on down the road.
Yeah, I always thought it was like I feel like every time he uses his power, that counter goes down, I think. So I think he even makes mention of it in one of these books where he says, like, I didn't need to use that power there, or I wasted.
Yep.
So I think that's it.
His soul on how long he lives, because the more energy he uses, the less time he has.
So that's how much his soul. That's how much life his soul left has, basically.
Right. Yeah. I think that's right. I think when that strikes zero, which I can't imagine how much they must have slowed down, how that timer goes down if they're at 300 issues. I wonder where that timer's at now, but I believe that is the case. But you mentioned the ground beef, and I did pull a couple of panels here. Whenever he's like sad, I find the look great.
Yeah.
Like that right there is just so haunting to me. When he discovers what he looks like. And it's interesting to have like a superhero, because he is one. I mean, to an extent, he's kind of an anti-hero or whatever, but it's interesting to have one that's so beloved out there who is like this ugly monster. You know what I mean? I mean, he is a monster. So that intrigues me as well. But
kind of neat. There's only really, other than him and the Punisher, are really, they're the only two that I can really think of that have ever made it as far as like a huge fan base.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah, I mean, you got some fringe characters, Bloodshot, and some other anti-heroes out there, but as far as a much larger fan base that have kept people, yeah, I think you're right.
You're talking about anti-heroes?
Yeah.
Deadpool, maybe?
Yeah.
Would be comparable.
Or Ghost Rider, even?
Yeah.
Maybe. You know what I thought was kind of interesting? We get a couple cameos of, they mentioned the Youngbloods, and they mentioned they have Savage Dragon on the television, which is kind of neat. It's kind of just a little bit more, far-reaching into the Image, I guess, comic book universe
catalog. Yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but this would have, I mean, I sound like a cheese ball here, but this would have spawned Image, right? Like this was their, right? I mean, this was their big, because all these guys, and you guys are probably more versed on comic book history than I am, but a lot of these guys were Marvel writers and artists who felt kind of let down, and there goes my cat almost knocking something over again. But right, is that correct?
Yeah, so early 1990s, Jim Lee, Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld. There's a very good show, like it's like an hour-long episode of something on YouTube. You can find it free to watch, where they actually discuss this. Like Youngbloods was, I forget who started that one. But this was Todd McFarlane's opening volley, if I understand that correctly, when Image started up. This is what Todd did. I think Youngbloods may have been Jim. Gen 13 was J. Scott Campbell's first cover. I forget who wrote that one. But there was, when they put Image together, they had a plan. Everybody had something lined up, like an opening salvo, an opening volley of comic books coming out. Yeah,
so this That Savage Dragon I was talking about. This came out. This was another big long.
Well, this is
issue.
the only one that stayed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This starts
kind of where you're going with that one. I mean, this is really the Spawn was the only one that really. Everybody else kind of split and went back to Marvel, went back to DC, went back to creating other stuff. They didn't really. I mean, they still have some of those books, but nobody's really doing much with them or anything. Spawn is really the only one that's been in there punching it day in and day out with the storyline.
And is he still like the guy for Spawn? Is he still doing all the art, all the writing? So he's been busting his ass on it, I would imagine, for what now? Like almost 30 years? I mean, is that right?
He's had some help. I mean, he's given, like, Capullo's done a bunch of the art and you know, even the most recent up to the 300s. And there's been some other guys that have come in and done it, but he has always, you're right. I mean, it's always kind of been his baby. He's always really oversaw the art. He's, you know, had that just overlooking that this is my baby and really taken a lot of that. Always done a variant cover on any of the big issues. Really, he's really cradled most all of it. You're absolutely right. But he has had a lot of artwork help and inkers and some pencilers and switched it up. Todd McFarlane is known for getting bored, so he doesn't like to just do the art over and over and over and over and over. So he'll write some and then he'll go and he'll do penciling and then he'll quit doing penciling and he'll do inking and then he'll stop doing inking and then he'll go in and do color and then, you know, switch it up with some other guys and really try and bring in new ideas with other guys. One of the great things about Todd, I watch a lot of Todd interviews because I really like Todd. And I live in Arizona, so he's close to home. He really listens to other guys. He really likes the fans' input. He really likes the other people's input. He really has taken, and I mean, in the we're up to 308 now, 307, 308. He's really expanded in the last, 20 or so, 50, on listening to some other stuff from some people. The storyline in the last 100 has gotten crazy. So to be talking about the first 6, which are just, I mean, it's like the first 20 are everything's a new, you got your Angela, you got in the first 20, you got Angela, you got Malbolge, you got
Violator,
you got, I mean, they're just, every book is a new character.
Yep.
It's crazy.
I thought it was fun just going through the issues. I like that this early they did an issue that was like, and I can't remember his name. I'm going to pull him up. I grabbed a screenshot of him too. But this guy, Billy Kincaid, the ice cream man. I believe that's what we're looking at here.
Yep.
Yeah, so I really liked that issue. Something about it, it's like, okay, we're going to take a small break from learning about, Al Simmons already. I think that's like the 3rd or 4th issue. And basically that whole issue just deals with him, going after this guy because he's almost, they're setting him up as like the secret protector of his family because he's worried, about Wanda's daughter, I believe at that point already. So I really like that. And the art, again, there was actually one panel that reminded me of something we talked about in Gideon Falls. It reminded me of this one here with the guy just like dead with, that is one of my favorites of anything that we read so far. But essentially, dudes.
Very interesting story. Finish your thought and let me grab something real quick. I have a very, very interesting story about that.
Well, no, you can go. Right there. Go ahead. I've got, I just love that whole part. And we haven't even talked about Twitch and what's the other cop's name?
Sam and Twitch.
Yeah, they're great.
Bring that panel back up really quick. Can we take a moment to realize the level of feat that officer has coming through the door, and I feel like the Todd father and Rob may have been in the same school of thought when it comes to feet in the early 1990s, but Todd obviously did something and changed over time and progressed, because in this read, these first 6 issues, I see a lot of Rob Liefeld feet going on.
Oh, really?
Though they are interesting feet. And see, this is where I'm gonna have fun now with this show, because I don't read as much obviously as you guys do, but this is the kind of stuff that's neat, because like the pouches are something that I have noticed, but now I'm gonna be looking at the feet. So now I'm gonna be, Mr. Foot Fetish Man who's looking at feet every single time.
Nothing wrong with that. It's 2020.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. But yeah, you've got a story, Solo, about the ice cream man.
I'm not sure where I said it, and that's what I was looking for. So, when I got lucky, because I've always wanted to meet Todd McFarlane, I moved to Phoenix. Came down here, got to meet him at the Alamo Draft House signing for first time. I got up. I was there at 5 a.m. Man, I was in line. I was waiting. I was like 4th in line. So after he signed my book, he and I actually got a couple, but he that's the only book. That's the only book that's signed by all 3. I had a Spawn #1 because I was like, God, what am I going to get signed? So after he signed it, we were all sitting there, and I was there with my buddies Brian McClay and Kyle from Absolute Geek podcast on Friday nights. And we're just sitting at the bar having some lunch talking, and Todd McFarlane's wife was there. So I went up and I was like, hey, would you please sign my Spawn #1? And she's like, absolutely. Now, did you know I am in the first 3 books? I am, part of the first 3 books. Now, we all know that's Wanda, but she was the editor for the first 3 books. And she said, let me tell you a story about the first 3 books. And it specifically goes to that picture you just showed. It got to that 3rd book, and she didn't like it. She thought it was a little too over the top. She said, I think you need to tone it down, Todd. And Todd said, I'm not toning it down. Like, that's not going to happen. You're not going to happen. So, short story long, she says she quit. Todd says he fires her. But she was the editor on the first 3 books, his wife, because she was a English school teacher and did a bunch of stuff in school and stuff. But that picture right there, she was like, I can't do it anymore. This goes a bunch. And we got to sit and talk to her about some of those stories. And she told us another one about Todd flying, forgot his shoes, and ended up going over to California and doing an interview with no shoes and all this stuff, and ended up coming home with no shoes. And another great story. Great woman. Behind every man is a good woman. And like Kirby had his wife, and she signed for him. She did all that stuff. Todd McFarlane's wife is out of this world awesome.
Sweet. And see, this is why we're glad you're here, because we never would have heard that story. Anybody have a favorite issue out of the ones they read? Now, not counting those last 2, Mike, that you read, because you outdid us there. But anybody have a favorite out of the first 6?
I think
outside of me, but go ahead.
I'm gonna go with issue. I think it was 3. When
I like 4.
You say 4?
And here's another part of that whole signing. So when I was there, I always had a question, and I couldn't figure out what the green sleeve in #4 was. So when Spawn first came out, he did, it was new to Image. It was new to all that stuff. And that's actually one of the other books I had him sign was my #4. And so in the middle of #4 is a green sleeve. Now it correlates with, don't quote me, I think there's 6 other books. And one of them has an orange sleeve. One of them has like Shadowhawk 2 has a sleeve in it. And then
that's right.
I think I can even give you. Yes, I can. Okay, so there's a sleeve in Brigade number 2, Savage Dragon number 3, Spawn number 4, Youngblood number 0, Cyberforce number 1, Shadowhawk number 1, and Wildcats number 2. So when these books first came out, they wanted people to be able to get more books. So if you collected all of the sleeves, you could send them in and get the next run of books. And it was a way that Todd's early idea of trying to not only help promote all of the books, but to get the word out about every book that Image had coming out, because it was a new company. He was trying to promote it. He was trying to not only build on his basis of Spawn, but he really wanted to get all the names of all the books out. So I could never figure out what the green sleeve was. An ex-girlfriend at the time, years ago, her mom found, and it was right after Spawn had come out, found a number 4 with a green sleeve, because my number 4 didn't have one. She talked them down at the secondhand store at one of the antique malls and picked up the book for, I kid you not, 50 cents. She said, I'm not paying $1 for that book. I want it for 50 cents. They gave it to her for 50 cents.
Yep.
Green sleeve books tend to be worth a little more money because they're not all in there.
Yep, that's it. So
There
what
you go.
that was is that was a mail away, and I'll share my screen here really quick for this book. If you bring that up, Jackson.
Yeah. Sorry, there you go.
It's the mail away for this Image 0, and that was the only way to get this book, was to take all of those coupons, compile them, and send them in, and then they would send you this book.
Right, there you go. There you go.
There's a fairly low print run on that book, because as you can imagine, most of those issues still have those green sleeves still in them.
Now, I could never figure out the whole story. So when I asked Todd, he also told me you not only got that book that you were just showing, but that you got the other books as well. You got like the next issue of all those books.
You mean that he knew that comic fans were suckers for collecting and that they would love the idea of collecting all these different things and sending them in? Shocking.
Well, that's something that they've tried and done quite a bit. Is one way is they're rewarding their fan base by, if you buy more of our stuff and you collect it, well, here's a way, here's a redeem. They've done that, actually redeeming coupons. Yeah, the Marvel value stamps. That's been going on forever. Actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah. And it's just a great way to do it. I mean, Todd, again, I hate to pump him up because he's my favorite, but Todd's a genius. He doesn't take no for an answer. If you're ever feeling down, one of the greatest things I love about Todd, if you're ever feeling down, watch 2 things. Watch Todd talk about what he did to get there and how he absolutely takes no for no answer. He will not ever take no for an answer. He literally sent in audition drawings until they hired him. And they were finally hired him because they were like, we're tired. He's got us killing us in mail. We can't open the mail. And then if you're still feeling just kind of, I need something, go watch ComicManAndy's new videos when he's going through grading his books, man. They're awesome. They're so fun to watch. He finds all these ticks and he's like, no, this is going to be dude, I loved it. It was great content. I loved it. It was so much fun.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Both of those I was just like, oh, this is the stuff, man. This is what we crave.
If you really want some,
he missed his calling as a motivational speaker, and ComicManAndy's out there like, I'm learning, and I want you guys to learn with me. Let's do this, and it's awesome to watch because I do not have that knowledge, man. I don't.
If you really want some old school ComicManAndy, go back and find my first CGC unboxing, and I'll give you a little hint. I never opened the box. Dude, I've got, that was like one of the first videos I did. I was like, this is going to be comedy gold. People are going to love this. I got so many thumbs down and so many hate messages.
It was like a good 20-minute video, and they're like, he never opened the damn box.
Yeah, but see, that sounds, I feel like I'd thumbs up that. Just hearing Andy talk is just gold. So, you know, I mean, he's great. But Mike, you were saying number 3, right?
Yeah,
number
I like
3 was your favorite?
3, mainly just because we kind of see, I guess, the devil and like his whole. That was like the first introduction that we had to seeing him and how he got us or got Al Simmons like to become Spawn, I guess. Yeah, and it was just really just the artwork. Really, I think that kind of stuck out for me more than any other issue. I mean, they're all great artwork. I really like the artwork in all of them. But yeah, man, I think just if I had to choose one of the issues, it'd be 3.
All right. How about you, Andy? Which one did you like the best?
I got to go with number 4. It was an all around great issue. The Violator wearing the Image branded T-shirt kills me every time. In that big full page panel.
Yeah,
which isn't going to come across well with my lighting, but and then on the next page, you've got Spawn in like a detective's getup trying to like conceal himself walking down on the street. And all of a sudden, all these kids come out and said, man, check him out. Cool. I didn't think he really existed. Like, look who it is. Look who it is. And they're chasing him down and they run past him and they go right up to the window to see Savage Dragon on the TV screen. And he's totally like, I don't know. I found a lot of clarity in that.
Huh? Yeah, I like that. Does anybody have trouble? Todd's artwork is awesome, obviously, but does anybody have trouble following the action a bit?
Yeah, I think it's just the way that's laid out. There's a lot of books out of the late 80s and early 90s that I feel are very laid out to be very story driven, but not very action driven, like from imagery standpoint, like artwork. And I think that's because a lot of artists in the 80s and 90s were still conforming to a way of telling a story, yet their art was light years beyond how stories were being told at that time.
That makes sense. No, that makes perfect sense. Because everything does look like an image frozen in time. Like the action is it's very difficult to, you read something like we did All-Star Superman, for instance, I guess would be an example. But you can clearly, when you're looking through the panels, you can almost see the motion, right? Yeah. Like, whereas with this, it feels a little bit more like it's just an image. Like it almost looks like the characters were told, okay, stand badass. You know what I mean? Look badass here. Yeah, right. Yeah. And so that was one thing I did notice. I would be interested, Mike, you mentioned possibly reading more of this. I would be very interested to see how this evolves over time. Because
it does. I mean, it's been out for 20 plus years,
Right. Yeah. So I will be very interested because I actually picked up volume 2 immediately just because I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make this a project. I'm going to read these. We'll see how far I get, but yes, I am excited to read more. So I guess
for individual issues.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. 300 issues would probably stack up pretty high, huh? If you were,
I got 1 through 8, and then I think I might have like 211, and then after that, I got like 10 issues of issue 300 because there had so many variant covers.
No, yeah. So you only have about 290 more to purchase then, right?
It's fine.
Yeah. There's actually there's a YouTube channel where he explains comics. And if you listen to those are really, really good. He doesn't go into every page detail, but he'll go through and he reads the books and he explains what's happening and he explains all the storyline and later on they get into God and Satan and all that stuff. And those are really helpful and really, really good.
Sweet. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Comics Explained. Is that who you're thinking of, Solo? I think there's a couple of them.
Yeah, I mean, Spawn has been so heavily, it's been around for 20 plus years, right? So there's been so many people that have just loved the series so much that they do all these in-depth reviews and recaps and just discussions just like this, where they discuss not only Spawn in the beginning, but Spawn in the middle, and all these little one-offs that he has, throughout history. It's the character is stretching across the decades.
Yeah, the other thing too that I thought was kind of neat in these too was when they introduced Overkill, because he's, and I think I get, Andy, that reaction. I really do, because my thought reading it was like, when I was a kid, I thought he was awesome, right? But now I'm reading it and I'm almost like, he doesn't fit very well into this.
I feel like that's one meeting in Todd's lifetime where nobody would take no for an answer from him, and they made him do something. I feel like that's just Image, like, we got to do something cross-title related into Spawn too, because Spawn's such a big hit. Let's draw some viewers over to this. And Overkill just overtly killed that issue.
That you're just the bringer of the jokes, Andy. But yes, I kind of agree. I
don't know. Like you said, it spans decades. This is going to be one of those series where I'm going to pay attention to collected editions on eBay, that when people are ready to part with them from their collections, you get a stack of trades or you get a hardcover or something like that. I'm definitely going to be looking for some of those deals to add this. I'm going to make that a challenge for the future. I'm not sure when yet, but I want to be able to read all up to current issues at some point. Now, I'm not going to collect the individual issues. I'm already strained on space and time now as it is, unless I find
Just
a black
do what
hole.
I'm doing. Just get rid of all of them. Everything you don't want, just get rid of it.
It's hard to collect them, that's for sure. And another part of the problem with that is, like, okay, so I don't know how much you guys watch the spec market. I'll watch a few podcasts here and there. I'm not sure if you guys noticed. But I mean, in this week, in the top 10, there was another 2 Spawn books. In the last 3 weeks, there's always seems to be something happening with Spawn. Todd McFarlane right now is doing his Kickstarter for all of his new toy line that's coming out, because everyone kept harassing him. So he was like, you know what? I've done it before. I'll do it again. So he started a Kickstarter. Great opportunity for, highly collectible future stuff.
Yeah. I think everybody that's collecting toys now, they're collecting toys now because of Todd McFarlane in the 90s.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, he took what we all grew up loving and he went, that's not good enough. You deserve more. And everyone went, yeah. Hey, you know what? You're right. I do, man.
Yep.
His toys are fantastic.
And so
I got a whole bunch right above me, right up here.
And so, I mean, it just, it's, I don't know. It's McFarlane.
So Solo Wookie, I have a question for you. You're obviously a huge Spawn fan. Have you read all 300 plus issues? Sorry, have you read all? Are you current? Have you read all the issue?
I have not read all of them, and a big part of it, I quit. Let me see. Where was I at? I went to somewhere 50s, 60s, and then I missed a whole span. I stopped collecting for a while, and then after that, I got back into it, and I started right previous to the 300s, late 200s, and read from there on. And I've perused and I've read, little excerpts of each and gotten updates of each, but I haven't really read each individual one.
From what I understand,
so many,
and I'm not sure.
It's hard. It's like saying, have you ever read the entire run of ASM? It's like it's almost.
Well, yeah, well, there's a lot more ASM than there are.
Finish my ASM collection now, and it's just every issue is a key issue. Every issue is a new character. Every issue is another storyline that just layers it deeper. So, if you can get an omnibus, which even those now are so rare, so hard to find, they are going to print a whole nother run, is what I've heard. So that's good. And if you can get an omnibus, that's the way to go. Trade paperbacks in volumes is another great way to go. Trying to collect every issue.
It's a fun
just
hunt.
hard
I
to
mean, it
find
depends
the
on
big
on
runs.
what kind of collector you are, you know. To each their own.
Yeah,
So
I definitely enjoy the hunt, and I definitely enjoy some of the speculation based stuff from CBSI. I read those guys quite heavily. That's a lot of fun because I know you talked about that a little bit ago. And when the Spawn stuff hits, every time when it shows up, when it's in discussion, every time it does, I'm like, man, I wish I would have stuck with that, or wish I would have collected that when I was a kid. I got heavily distracted by Michael Turner, and got pulled away from Jim Lee, and got pulled away from Todd McFarlane. And, Michael Turner was selling covers. And when you're 13, 14, 15 years old and got your first job, I'm buying covers. I was only reading half of what I bought, but I digress.
Yeah, so I guess this actually turned into kind of a different episode because we're kind of talking about Spawn as a cultural thing versus going through the actual story, which is kind of understandable because going through the whole story of Spawn is probably not going to happen on this show unless I pick Spawn for the next 10 years, guys. And then it would happen.
You can't talk about the first 6 issues without talking about how Image kind of started, and then talking about Todd McFarlane. And it kind of goes hand in hand. If you're going to dip into the first 6 issues, there's a lot of backstory and explaining to do with Image, Todd, and a lot of other things. So it just kind of births into its own gem. I've got.
Well, what's kind
hard
of
to talk about Spawn and not talk about the cultural icon of what it started, when it started, what it sparked, when it started, all of that, all the things and people involved. It's really hard not to explain and get into that. It's the story's great, and you can go through all the story, but there's so many little excerpts and so many. It's kind of like comic book hunting. Where you're looking for those books and you're looking for the ones, but as you start, like YouTube, there's 1,000,001 Todd interviews in there, and you start watching Todd interviews and Todd motivational speakings, Todd on stage with Stan Lee. Todd is literally the Stan Lee of our time. So not to address some of that while you're talking especially about the first books, just like Andy was saying. I mean, just spot on point. You almost can't not do it.
No, it's more fun. It's an interesting conversation, I would say. So
really,
now,
though, Jackson, I mean, when we talk about the story of the first 6 issues, it's like we just said, it's mainly just an origin story.
Right.
It's like, okay, America's Top Gun died, and he came back 5 years later as he sold his soul to the devil, and this is his journey, right?
Yep, it's true. Yeah.
Kind of it. I mean, there's a lot of little kind of characters and battles and things like that. Whatever,
sure,
but that's the story.
Yeah, no, totally. And I kind of rolling this into Todd McFarlane now and not taking no for an answer. He is trying to make a movie with Jamie Foxx and Jeremy Renner. And from what I understand, the direction he wants to go with it is that Spawn is almost like a side character in the movie, and it's more about the 2 cops. And it's going to be kind of a darker, more horror type story.
Sam and Twitch, yeah.
Which to me sounds absolutely awesome. So I hope that he gets that made. Whatever it takes to do it. So
yeah, and my understanding is the whole reason why this hasn't been greenlit 100% all the way through is that Todd wants complete, utter, start to finish control as a director and as a producer, if I remember correctly. Or maybe it's just director. I don't know how all those roles fit together. But the people funding it aren't comfortable with him being a director because he has no history as a director. Well, right. I mean, if you really wanted to get this project off the ground, and they've been chipping away at this for 4 years now, I think I've been
a while.
Movie. Well, why not take the first 2 years to get a couple of movies under your belt and build some sort of credit and do something? He's so busy, though. I get why he wouldn't do that. So that's kind of a That's
Well,
kind of a
he's got
rabbit
Funny
hole.
you say that because that's exactly the conversation that me and Riley had when that news broke on our show. We were talking about like, hey, just get a couple of movies, even if they're low budget, just get something to add to your resume, right? Just so that you can be like, hey, I've done this. I think I want to add a couple of things of this into this new Spawn movie. This is the direction I want to take it.
That's like a young adult being like, I want to get my first job, but I don't have a resume, and everybody won't hire me because I don't have a resume.
Well, it's interesting because he has Blumhouse backing this, I believe.
Yeah.
And if anybody knows anything about Blumhouse, they do random, like really good horror movies, but they've also got the division that does stuff like Truth or Dare or Fantasy Island or all these like really cheesy low budget movies. And I've got to imagine what he has in mind is a relatively low budget. So I'm surprised. I'm surprised that this wouldn't be huge and they just let him do it for maybe give him like $15 million to make it, because I gotta think it's gonna make money like any of those, like all those crappy horror movies they shoot out, they all make money. So I'm surprised that they won't just give him, unless he's got this grand thing that's way beyond what they want to give him.
I think
there's a couple of problems that he's run into. He wants a rated R movie. Nobody wants to make a rated R Spawn because they say there's no market for rated R comic movies.
Horseshit.
Nobody will go see it. Now, with that said, we just saw the phenomenon, excitement in the public about the Joker. The Joker broke the mold. Todd is very, very grateful and thankful that the Joker went out, made an R-rated movie, broke the box office, and now it's opened some doors for Todd to come in and go, hey, look, there is the public wants an R-rated superhero movie. Venom should have been an R-rated movie, should have went darker, should have been better. The new one needs to be darker. You're getting Carnage, you're getting Venom. It should be dark. It should be R-rated. They'll go see it. Trust me. Parents today are not like parents back in the day. I grew up watching Porky's when I was 10 years old.
Yep.
Hey, Deadpool too. Deadpool made a ton of money. So,
yeah.
That market. So he does have a little higher budget. He does want a little more money. Part of the reason he wants to direct, and this is, I'm speaking from all the interviews and all the documentaries and all the things that I've watched lately. Now he doesn't say this, but you can kind of tell. And Paul brought it up earlier too. When he gave that to HBO and they let him have control, he blew it out of the water. That's one of the best animated, little series, little 2-clip, whatever series that ever to hit the screen. I mean,
it was great.
It was amazing. Everybody in the comic book world, in the world of animation, in the world of, that's what they were interested in, is those things, cartoons, all that. We saw that and we went, oh man, did you see that? That is the newest version of heavy metal we're gonna get. That's as good as it gets. That is amazing. And we watched it. We recorded it on VHS. Yes, I know I just dated myself.
I remember.
We broke the VHS tape. We broke it. And then we tried to record it from a friend so that we could watch it again. And it was amazing. So he got burnt when he did the movie. They did the first movie. He's like, they changed more stuff than I wanted to, and I didn't have a choice. It came out poorly. It portrayed on the screen poorly. I told them it would. They didn't believe me. We tanked in the box office.
Oh God, yeah, 1997.
So he won't do it again. He's like, I'm not making the same mistake twice.
I don't blame him. I'm scared. I'm scared to watch that movie again. I got to be honest, because I haven't seen it in years, and I think I liked it. I was like 10, 11 or something when it came out. I loved it when I was a kid, but yeah, it's terrible if I remember correctly.
Well, congratulations! You just gave Andy a new choice, and if he ever wins the next,
oh no! Oh no!
So we're talking 1997, budget of 40 million and a box office at almost 88 million. And I want to say, Solo, you brought up a great point. 80s and 90s, I remember growing up, R-rated movies, Die Hard series. Movies were geared to adults. And it wasn't distasteful. It was R-rated for the action, blood, gore, cussing, whatever. And then late 90s, it all started. I feel like, Spawn was kind of part of that, but it really hit hard when Disney took over and in 1999 did Phantom Menace. They started gearing everything towards a younger crowd and going PG-13. I'm hoping that with Joker, just like Solo Wookiee's talking about here with Joker, and then hopefully we can trend this over into Spawn with Todd McFarlane, we can get back to movies being geared towards adults and R-rated. We control the money. As adults on the market, we control the money. You want to pander to a bunch of kids and do PG or PG-13 movie, cool, that's great. But adults are going to control the money and they're going to go back and see these movies repeatedly and buy all this stuff and buy all the box sets. A 10-year-old kid isn't going to go see a movie 10 times. They ain't got the money for it.
Well, and it's also, you just mentioned, like, it blows me away. The budget was 40 million. Like, I've seen better looking movies made recently for 10 million. So I think that the best way to do Spawn would be, in my opinion, like it sounds like his plan is to keep him in the dark. We don't need some big expensive CGI cape that they spend $20 million on for, you know what I mean? Like be smart about it. I pray it gets made, especially with Jamie Foxx. I mean, that is awesome. If he does that,
Yep.
But
and Spawn was PG-13 in 97. And didn't get anywhere near the ratings that it would have gotten if it was rated R and wasn't cut down and clipped down.
Yeah, it even had Martin Sheen in it, which was,
another perfect point to bring up is Jackson, you held up that Billy Kincaid. You held up that photo and you're like, look at this photo. He's hanging in chains. This dude is jacked. You're not showing that in PG-13. You're not talking about the pedophile ice cream man in PG-13 that is the governor's son. That you're not touching those topics in PG-13. Now you can do it in R, and guess what? You're gonna sell tickets because people are gonna be like, "That's some real life shenanigans happening. I want to see it."
Yeah, you're totally right too. Thinking about Spawn PG-13, it's just it's an abomination that they would even attempt to do Spawn in PG-13. Like
we need to get away from the singularity or the singular idea of gearing a movie for everyone and gear it towards people with the money that want to see this stuff. Get back to that. When you look at the late 80s and the early 90s, those movies, action movies were geared towards action fans and adults with money. Drama movies were geared towards people who enjoyed drama. Movies were geared to people who enjoyed them. Now it's like, this is a whole nother tangent, the deep rabbit hole for a whole nother show.
You're right, though. It's you got to spend $250 million, and if your movie doesn't make $1 billion, it's a failure. That's how it is now. Well, and the other problem too, and we talk about this on our show a lot, is like, a message to our audience and to all of us sitting here. If you hear a movie's good from someone, go see it. Support good stuff, regardless of how small it is, whether it's an independent movie, whether everybody's talking about it, because it really is a bummer. We've been doing movie reviews now for 2 years, me and the co-host, and it's like, it's a bummer when we're really excited about a movie and then you read and it lost money. You know what I mean? And it's like, why did it lose money? We don't only have movie theaters for Marvel movies, folks. There's other stuff to see, and I wish more people would see more stuff. So
here's another kind of issue to think about. We don't know what the movie market's going to do in the next 10 years.
That's
With
a good
the
point.
COVID outbreak and people being at home, you're going to see movies hit a theater. I don't know this for sure, but this is what I assume. You're going to see it hit a theater. It'll be there for a couple of weeks, 3 weeks. It will go out of the theater. You'll have a 2-week lag, and it'll be live streamed into your home. You're going to see more home theater systems sold in the next 5 years than ever before. and
Yep.
more people are going to enjoy and live stream movies at home than they will in the theater because of this pandemic, and it's kind of forced us into that thinking.
Right.
It will really help and kind of hurt a little bit of the market in both ways. And now the rating system isn't such a big deal anymore because you're doing it at home.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
True.
Mike, you've been silent up there. You look like you're pondering. What do you got?
I'm trying to think of who I want to cast in Spawn right now. That's really what I'm thinking about.
Well, you've got
Jamie Foxx. I'm trying to think of who Renner would play. I'm assuming Renner would either play one of the cops or the like when Spawn tries to turn into a human and he turns into a white guy. I think maybe that's who Jeremy Renner might play.
He's playing Twitch.
Oh, is he?
Yep.
Yes.
So let's be honest. Let's be honest while you're thinking about that, though. The only person right now in today's day and age disgusting enough and small enough and round enough to play Violator is Danny DeVito.
He would be great as Violator.
Oh, and it's only because of Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I always see him. I could smell him through the screen because he's so good at portraying that role, that person, that he's only 1 or 2 steps worth of evil away from being the Violator.
Actually, that is brilliant casting. I mean, if that happened,
I like it.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, we're getting over an hour here. I think, I guess final thoughts on Spawn. Mike, we'll start with you.
I'm going to give this I'll give it a B+, just because it's the origin story. It's the beginning of an incredible journey that's continuing still to this day. I mean, I read it, got real excited about Spawn again, and I'm going to continue the hunt until I find something better or get bored of it or something. One of the two will happen. So
yeah,
sweet. Andy,
I'm going to go with a B+. The only reason why it doesn't go higher is it's a little dated in the way the story's told, like the way things are kind of laid out. The art's on point, the origins on point. It's Spawn, but just kind of the way, I don't know, it's a stereotypical layout of a comic book back then in 1992 kind of dates and kind of hurts the way it rereads now. But yeah, it's solid B+. And for the love of God, if somebody doesn't pick volume 2 for an episode here in the near future, I'm going to be sad.
Yeah, but us picking it isn't a requirement. You could, I know you have all that time on your hands, right? He's actually like, yeah,
it's way more fun with you guys though.
Perfect. And Solo, I'm assuming you got a high grade for Spawn, just in general.
We lost you for a second, Solo. Can you go again?
Sorry, this internet out here at the evening time sucks, and they've been working on it. They're putting in new fiber optics. So for a second, I keep getting little second lags, and it's like, God, would you guys just get it done? I honestly have to give it an A-. As much as I love this, as much as I love the background, the story, I love it. But it's a solid A-. There is a lot of other stuff out there that I do enjoy a lot more. And I think it's a staple in history of the books, but it's a solid A- for me. Once you get later on in the reading and you're not just at the beginning, it gets a lot better and the story gets off the hook. Just stay with it.
Nice. Yeah, I'm gonna go with you guys and say it's a B+, and that's probably the lowest grade I've given on this show thus far, which is, I mean, we're reading good stuff, right?
Yeah.
So but just the thank you to everyone here, because it gave me an excuse to go read it. And as a kid, this was the only comic book that I ever bought any issues of or had my parents buy me any issues of. Something about just the look of the character itself. His design is an A+. He's just a cool ass, badass character. I'm dying for a movie. I'm dying for one. I want one so bad.
The Spawn
yeah.
movie doesn't hold up, does it?
No, it's terrible if I remember correctly. I was a little bummed because I thought Chapel came in earlier, and I think Chapel, if I remember correctly, is like one of my favorite characters in this whole thing. Just the skull face paint, badass as hell. So I will be continuing to read it. Whether or not I pick it depends on how nice you are to me, Andy. If you're friendly, I will pick more Spawn. If you go and pick something horrible this week, which I think I know what you're going to pick. So that's not going to happen.
Double checking. Andy's choice this week.
Yes.
Choice is it next week?
Yours.
Got it. All right.
Yep. So I guess we're at that point in the show. And hey, by the way, actually, thank you, Solo Wookie, for hopping on with us.
Definitely.
Really appreciate
Anytime. Like I said, I apologize for my internet again. I gotta get this darn room finished. It's almost done, but it's getting there. I just gotta get it all finished wiring, finished lighting, and then and just be done. Thank you for having me. I so appreciate it. It was so much fun.
Yeah, awesome.
I think that this isn't going to be the last time too, man. So we definitely appreciate you got an open invite, buddy. So
I'm always up for talking.
Cool.
Sweet.
Hell yeah.
So now that we're through all of our goodbyes, what are we going to be reading this week, Andy? What are we reading?
Oh, gee, I wonder. We're going to do Gideon Falls 3 next Saturday here, barring schedules. Life comes first, family comes first. So if we have to delay a couple of weeks or delay a couple of Saturdays, sure, that's fine. But the next read from Bored and Annoyed is going to be Gideon Falls 3, and it'll be over on my channel. I think you guys want to do that, right?
Yep.
And I think that wraps up where Gideon Falls is at.
Yep.
I don't think volume 4 is out. So once we do volume 3, then we can move on from that.
Sweet. So now you'll have left us hanging, Andy, with Saga and Gideon Falls.
Well, at least you won't be
if I'm as upset when I finish Gideon Falls Volume 3 as I was when I finished this, I'm going to find you and bring my Superman omnibus, the Death of Superman omnibus, and attack you with it.
I'll give you a few free shots because now that you mentioned it, everything I've picked that we've read has ended on a cliffhanger.
Yeah. So yes, but that's exciting too, because that'll be a real special show whenever those books start back up.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my Lord. Yes.
Yeah.
That's gonna be real exciting. Are we gonna do like an issue by issue? Or we're gonna wait until every 6 weeks?
I think we have to go issue by issue to schedule, depending on schedules and depending on real life and what's going on. I think you gotta go issue by issue because it's month to month.
Well, and what we can do is we can sliver it out as like a 5 to 10 minute part that comes at the end of the episode of whatever other book we're talking about, right?
That'd be nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
There'll be a lot to talk about when that hits because you're like, oh my gosh, remember this from that?
Right.
I can't wait. Andy, you have me Googling like Saga update and Saga news like every week. It's horrible. And I can't remember maybe like a episode of Game of Thrones or reading one of those books or something, but I can't remember something hitting me that hard fictionally. That was just that brutal. So I'm still mad at you. I'll get over it someday.
Well, the name of the show is Bored and Annoyed with ComicManAndy. So
Downright Annoyed. Downright annoyed.
Yes.
So yes, you're living up to the you've got a reputation to keep. So Perfect. And thank you for it. What was it? You introduced it to Mike, who introduced it to me. So thank you for doing that because it's unbelievable. But yeah, we're going to bring Saga up on all of our episodes.
Yeah. And once this world rights itself of everything that's happening now, I mean, we're already looking at comic books hitting the shelves again, the 27th. So maybe it's only a matter of time now because they did promise 2020. They did say 2020, so I don't know. This is a 2-month blurb or 2-month blip that this is the 2 months that apparently didn't happen or nothing happened. So I don't know if that delays them into 2021.
Or maybe it made them sit down and zone in. Who knows?
Yeah, you never know. I will say this is artists and creators. I feel this is well around. I hope this feeling is around the board. but I'm seeing more artists and creators doing personal and custom commissions across the board, and they are busier than what I feel like they have been, which is amazing that the community's banding together and hit up their favorite creators and their favorite artists. And hey, they've been open to this stuff. And I've seen people putting on amazing commissions constantly on Instagram all the time.
And I think we'll continue to see more of it.
Sweet. Well, hey, again, thank you very much. I've been Jackson from Bored and Annoyed. We've had our guest Solo Wookie, ComicManAndy, and Downright Nerdy Podcast. And make sure you go sub up and set a reminder over on ComicManAndy's channel for next week. Gideon Falls Volume 3, and watch our first 2 volumes on Gideon Falls. Another great book that I'm going to be upset with the world over when I stop reading it. But all right. Thank you all. Have a good one.